Welcome back everybody. Right off the bat, if you haven't watched the Star Wars Rebels finale, spoiler warning as we will be discussing events that brought the show to an end. So here we go. Okay, props to Governor Pryce for going down and remaining loyal to the Empire. Even though she was portrayed as somewhat of a coward, I like the decision they made in showing her accept her fate. Now, how about Palpatine and his old seductive ways? Now, I'm sure Stupendous Wave or maybe even Star Wars Theory might have covered this before, but it seems like Palpatine has the ability to alter his physical appearance. I'm sure his disfigurement would lead many to be repulsed by him, and he probably does this when he tries to charm a person. I'm not sure if he uses this ability when he's out in public as well. I mean, back in Revenge of the Sith, he did use his disfigurement to sway public opinion against the Jedi. So, Palps had the remaining elements of the Jedi Temple of Lothal reassembled on Thrawn's Star Destroyer. He whips out his old charm and tries to convince Ezra to open the doorway. Now, if you've watched my previous video based on the World in Between Worlds episode, I focused on the fact that Star Wars had just introduced time travel and alternate timelines or alternate realities. Now, you might not be a fan of that, but some people thought that wasn't the case. They made the argument that it was actually like a theater where you would only watch what had already occurred through those portals. But Palpatine confirms it here. He tells Ezra that this alternate reality where his parents are still alive is waiting for him. All he needs to do is go forward. Also, even though Palpatine is a fan of going to the theater, I don't think he wants to enter this world in between worlds just to watch things that have happened. He wants to enter so he can use it to manipulate events and become even more powerful. Now, Ezra does something that Anakin failed to do. He refuses Palpatine's offer and destroys the temple. Now the question is, are there any other temples like this one out there? Palpatine is not too happy about that, and this was one of my favorite scenes ever in Rebels, perhaps even in Star Wars. Palpatine's hologram walks out of the rubble and it flickers between his public persona and his hideous Sith Emperor persona. It reminded me very much of Samara from The Ring coming out of the television screen, a true horror moment and an indication of how evil Palpatine truly is. This leads to another great scene. Palpatine's Red Guards, or Elite Guards, enter and use what I presume to be some kind of force repellent device. It incapacitates Ezra and lifts him up in the air. I'm sure Palpatine's greatest fear was the return of the Jedi. So he's had his research department working on these kinds of devices. If not that, then maybe it's ancient technology he's managed to recover in his search for artifacts. Of course, Ezra manages to escape, but this is definitely intriguing, right? It comes back to Snoke and his elite Praetorian guards and what his connection to Palpatine might be. Why have such similar guards in the first place? Is Snoke a Palpatine fanboy? Or is there something more to it than that? Now, since the beginning of the show, there's been a lot of speculation about Ezra's fate, considering the fact that there were no other Jedi that we know of when A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back came around. Would Ezra die? Would he turn to the dark side? Will he enter an alternate reality through one of those portals? Well, now we come to some of the problems I have with the finale. It was kind of a cop-out in my opinion. Of course, I don't know what their future plans are for Ezra, so it might make sense eventually in the bigger scheme of things somehow. But no answers really. Ezra and Thrawn have been taken out of the picture by space whales. That's right. Just when Admiral Thrawn was fulfilling the image I've always had of him, a no-nonsense, brilliant tactician who was finally going to give a crushing blow to the rebels, a bunch of space whales arrive. They destroy his fleet, wrap their tentacles around his ship, and jump to hyperspace, conveniently taking him and Ezra out of the picture, at least during the events of the original trilogy anyway, as we have confirmation later on that Hera and Rex take part in the Battle of Endor, which is pretty cool. I wonder if that big tentacle monster from the Solo trailer is in fact one of these space whales. You know who would have given us a definitive answer on Ezra's and Thrawn's fate if they had written the finale? That's right, Rian Johnson. They both would have died because it would have been the hardest thing for Rey to hear. So where did the space whales take Ezra and Thrawn to? My best guess would be the unknown regions. So put your speculation hats on, peoples. Ezra is still alive, Dave Filoni is working on a new animated series. Thrawn is from the unknown regions, the First Order return from the unknown regions. It's heavily implied that they might have met Snoke in the unknown regions. You can see the possibilities here. Ezra Bridger, his surname, is he supposed to be a bridge to something? Now, after Disney acquired the Star Wars franchise, I found it interesting that they chose the time period they did. That is, they placed the show before the events of A New Hope. Why not something closer to The Force Awakens, for instance? So bear with me, what if Rebels was simply an origin story for Ezra, and he plays a part in the sequel trilogy somehow? I'm not saying he's Snoke. Snoke is a 7-foot humanoid alien, but what about Snoke's other rumored apprentice? Anyways, what if this new animated series once again focuses on Ezra in the unknown regions? If so, I would imagine he might actually end up becoming friends with Thrawn eventually. Thrawn would be like a guide of sorts, since the unknown regions is his home turf. I could see them going on adventures together, and maybe Ezra eventually wins Thrawn over. The more I think about it, the more I like it. It would be an entirely new setting with new factions, and perhaps they meet Snoke there. Perhaps they are the ones who awaken him. Now, at the end there, Ahsoka arrived looking all sagely and wise. Nice. Not a fan of Sabine's new hairstyle though. I'm sure it's meant to be like a homage to Ezra, but it looks like she opened up a social sciences department on Lothal. By the time she actually finds Ezra, is she going to shave her head completely bald? Everybody's hairstyle on this show seems to be getting shorter and shorter as time passes on. So I imagine Ahsoka and Sabine fly off to the unknown regions to search for Ezra. This opens up a lot of possibilities for books and comics to tell their story as well, until they finally meet up with Ezra and Thrawn again. Ahsoka might have learned something through the Force, and she might know where they are. So even though I do feel it's kind of a cop-out, if they have planned to continue Ezra's story in the next animated series, I guess this was a pretty smart way to do it. His absence during the events of the original trilogy have been explained, as well as Thrawn's absence from these events. Now, how about Jacen Syndulla? Hera has a son with Kanan. How is it that possible? When did it happen? I mean, when did they find the time? Because when she was about to tell him her true feelings, that she loved him, they were interrupted and then Kanan died. So they must have gotten funky before she was captured. Anyways, I was hoping Luke ended up with a family of his own. Some critics of that idea state that Jedi don't have intimate relationships. Well, the older Jedi didn't, but it's a new frontier now. Anakin had children, Kanan had a son, and Luke became a suicidal hermit. So we have another potential Jedi here, and yes, Jacen is spelled Jacen like from Legends, so they're mixing and recycling ideas from the EU. Now the question is, since Hera does play a part in the original trilogy, off screen of course, does Jacen Syndulla end up at Luke's Jedi Academy? If he does, he might be a little too old by then to be a student, but if he is he one of the students that is killed by Kylo Ren and his followers, or is he one of the students that left with Kylo Ren and eventually becomes a Knight of Ren? Maybe we never find out, or maybe they are setting up all these little Easter eggs for the hardcore fans to follow. So that's it everybody, what did you think of the finale and Rebels overall? What would you like the next animated series to be about? Do you think it follows Ezra and Thrawn after their disappearance? Leave your thoughts down below. If you are new here and enjoyed the content, hit that notification bell to stay updated with this channel, and don't forget to like, share, sub and all of that good stuff. And until next time, see yous.